George Orwell. You hear that name, and what comes to mind? Probably chilling images of surveillance, propaganda, maybe thought control. He's the man behind two of the most powerful political warnings ever written, Animal Farm and 1984. But here's the thing. To really understand these prophetic books, you've got to understand the man who lived them first. So let's dive in. Right. So how does a guy basically predict a world of Big Brother and the thought police? How do you create concepts that somehow feel more relevant today than when you wrote them? Well, the answer isn't some crystal ball stuff. It's found in a life that was packed with conflict, poverty, and a really deep disillusionment with power. To get the warnings, you first have to get the man. All right, so our story really starts with the making of an outsider, because before there was George Orwell, there was Eric Blair, and his early years would forge this incredibly powerful, lifelong conscience against injustice. This timeline really maps out a fascinating journey. He was born into the British Empire in India, went to England's best schools. He seemed set up for a pretty comfortably life, right? But instead of climbing that ladder, he joined the Imperial Police in Burma. And there, he saw oppression up close and personal and came to absolutely hate the system he was a part of. So he quits. And then he actually chose to live in poverty in Paris and London, deliberately seeing what life was like from the very, very bottom. And this right here, this is the crucial point. See, this wasn't some academic exercise for him. He had been a cog in the machine of empire, enforcing its rules. And then he was on the receiving end of it all, literally experiencing homelessness. This gave him this unique 360-degree view of how power and inequality actually work on the ground. So this whole journey of disillusionment, it all builds to what is probably the most pivotal moment of his entire life, the crucible of war, the Spanish Civil War. This wasn't just some conflict he read about. No, this was the turning point that basically crystallized everything he believed about politics, power, and the truth. Orwell went to Spain with a super clear goal: to fight against fascism. Simple, right? He believed he was on the side of the good guys. But what he found there, it completely shocked him. He discovered that his own side, the one supposedly fighting for freedom, was just as capable of using propaganda, political manipulation, and straight-up lies as the fascists they were fighting against. Yeah, what he saw in Spain was, well, a masterclass in how ideals can fall apart. He saw truth getting twisted into a weapon. He saw political groups literally rewriting history as it happened. And this experience, it cemented his profound distrust of all forms of totalitarian control. It didn't matter if it came from the political right or the left. For Orwell, the real enemy was authoritarianism itself, period. So what do you do with all this firsthand experience of oppression and deceit? Well, if you're George Orwell, you turn it into art. You write the ultimate warnings, channeling everything you saw in the real world into two of the most important novels of the 20th century. First up in 1945 was Animal Farm. Now, on the surface, it seems like a simple story about animals on a farm, but it's actually this razor-sharp, chilling allegory for the Russian Revolution. It shows how these noble revolutionary ideals can be totally corrupted by power, leading to a new tyranny that's just as bad, if not worse, than the old one. You know the line, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others? That was his warning, right there. And then, in 1949, came his masterpiece, 1984. And look, this wasn't just a story. This was the culmination of everything he had lived through. The constant surveillance, the manipulation of truth with newspeak, the absolute crushing of individual thought. It was a terrifying future built brick by brick from the political lies and oppression he'd seen with his own two eyes. He even gave us the very language to talk about these dangers. Think about it. When we say Big Brother is watching, we're using a phrase that Orwell literally invented. It just goes to show you how deeply his fiction has woven itself into our reality. It's become our shorthand for describing the exact systems of control he warned us about. Tragically, Orwell didn't live long enough to see the incredible global impact of his work, but his voice has only gotten louder over time. So, let's take a look at why his warnings are still so unbelievably important in the 21st century. He died from tuberculosis in 1950. He was only 46 years old. I mean, it's just staggering to think about it. He passed away so soon after publishing 1984, having no idea that his work would become this timeless manual for understanding the dangers of power. And why is it timeless? Well, just look at this list. Seriously,
government surveillance, misinformation, and what we now call fake news, the constant fight for free speech, the abuse of power. These aren't history lessons. These are literally today's headlines. Orwell's ideas aren't just relevant, they're absolutely essential for navigating the world we live in right now.
Which brings us to this final, incredibly powerful quote. Orwell believed that clear, simple language was the ultimate weapon against tyranny. So his life and his work really leave us with a vital question for our own time. In an age of endless information and political spin, what does it actually mean to tell the truth? And is that simple act more revolutionary today than it has ever been?